Cassidy Morgan, 32, never imagined that a casual Sunday dinner would alter her entire life trajectory. With trembling hands, she opened her laptop to check her bank account balance, $218, 637.29. It was done. Her brother's company was now hers, every asset, every contract, every client. Family loyalty only matters until it doesn't, she whispered to herself, remembering how it all began 6 months ago, with those fateful words at the dinner table. Hey everyone! Before I dive into how I went from nearly homeless to owning my brother's multi-million-dollar business, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below. If you've ever had to deal with family betrayal, hit that like button, and make sure to subscribe for more stories about karma coming full circle. This family revenge drama gets pretty intense, so buckle up, justice gets served ice cold. I had always believed our family was closer than most. Growing up in suburban Connecticut, my older brother Marcus and I were only 3 years apart, raised by parents who stressed the importance of family above all else. When our parents died in a car accident 5 years ago, leaving us their modest home and a small life insurance payout, Marcus and I promised to always look out for each other. He was 35 then, already successful with his property management company, while I was 27 and still finding my footing in graphic design. "We stick together," Cass Marcus had said at the funeral, his arm around my shoulders. "That's what Mom and Dad would want." The arrangement seemed perfect at first. I would live in our childhood home, which was fully paid off, while Marcus would handle the property taxes and maintenance from his significantly larger income. In return, I would help with his business whenever he needed design work or administrative support. I essentially became his on-call graphic designer, creating everything from logos to marketing materials, often working late nights and weekends without formal compensation. It was family helping family, at least that's what I thought. My design career had been struggling to take off. Despite my talent, according to my professors, and the few clients I'd managed to secure, breaking into the competitive graphic design world proved harder than I'd anticipated. The uncertainty of freelance work meant my income fluctuated wildly. Some months I barely made rent, while others were more comfortable. Through it all, Marcus assured me that the family home was mine as much as his, and I shouldn't worry. "Focus on building your portfolio," he'd say. "The house is taken care of." What I didn't realize was that Marcus had been quietly changing the ownership structure of our parents' home. About 2 years after their death, he had convinced me to sign some papers that he claimed were just updating the inheritance documentation for tax purposes. In my grief and trust, I hadn't read the fine print. Those papers had transferred majority ownership to him, 79% to his 21%. Legally, the childhood home I lived in was now predominantly his property. I remained blissfully unaware of this shift until 3 months ago, when Marcus got engaged to Vanessa, a corporate lawyer whose ambition matched his own. She was sleek, polished, and immediately took an interest in optimizing Marcus's assets. I had met her only a handful of times before their engagement, and while she was always cordial, there was something calculating in the way she looked at me, as though I were an equation that didn't balance. Their relationship progressed at warp speed. Within 6 months of meeting, they were engaged and making plans for their future. I was happy for Marcus. He deserved love, after dedicating so much of his life to building his business and taking care of our shared responsibilities. What I didn't realize was that Vanessa saw me as a liability rather than family. Around this time, my one stable client, a local restaurant chain that had provided me with consistent monthly work, went out of business, leaving me financially vulnerable. I picked up odd design jobs where I could, but the gig economy was merciless, especially in our affluent town, where connections often mattered more than talent. "You should consider getting a real job," Marcus commented one evening, when I mentioned my financial concerns. There was a new edge to his voice that I hadn't heard before. "You know, something stable with benefits. You've been trying the design thing for years now." His words stung more than I let on. The design thing was my passion, my career, not some phase I was going through, and the implication that I wasn't trying hard enough felt like a betrayal of its own. I'm building something, I defended myself. It takes time to establish yourself as a freelancer. He'd shrugged, his attention already back on his phone. Sure, Cass. Whatever you say. The subtle shifts in our relationship continued. Marcus visited less frequently. When he did come by the house, he would scrutinize things, noting the scuffed hallway paint or commenting on the aging kitchen appliances. It felt like he was cataloging deficiencies rather than visiting his sister. Then came the dinner invitation. Vanessa and I want to discuss some plans with you, he said over the phone, his voice deliberately casual. Come over Sunday around 6, nothing formal, just family stuff. I had no reason to suspect what was coming. In fact, I was excited to spend time with them both, hoping to strengthen my relationship with my future sister-in-law. I even brought an expensive bottle of wine, stretching my limited budget because family celebrations matter. Looking back now, I see all the warning signs I missed. The way Marcus had begun referring to my house instead of our house, or mom and dad's place. How Vanessa would ask pointed questions about my 5-year plan. The casual comments about property values in our neighborhood. They had been laying groundwork while I remained oblivious, secure in my belief that family loyalty was unbreakable. I arrived at their sleek downtown apartment that Sunday evening, nervous but hopeful. Their place was immaculate. All clean lines, neutral tones, and expensive minimalist furniture that made my eclectic artistic home seem chaotic by comparison. Vanessa greeted me with her perfect smile, taking the wine with a polite, "How thoughtful," that somehow made me feel I'd brought the wrong thing. As we sat down to a dinner that Vanessa had whipped up, a restaurant-quality meal that would have taken me days to prepare, the conversation flowed superficially. Work updates, wedding planning details, local gossip. I began to relax, thinking perhaps I had misread the tension of recent months. Then, as Vanessa served coffee and a delicate French dessert I couldn't pronounce, Marcus cleared his throat and said those fateful words that would change everything. "Cass, we need to discuss the house situation. The rent is now $800 per month, starting next month. Don't like it, you can move out." The silence that followed Marcus's announcement felt eternal. The delicate porcelain coffee cup trembled in my hand as his words echoed in my ears. Rent $800 for the home our parents had left to both of us. "I don't understand," I finally managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. "That's our family home." "I don't pay rent," we agreed. "I'd live there while helping with your business." Marcus exchanged a glance with Vanessa, who gave him a subtle nod. That silent communication told me everything. This had been planned, rehearsed even. That arrangement made sense when we were both getting established, Marcus said, his tone businesslike, as if we were discussing a contract with a stranger. "But it's been 5 years, Cass. You're still struggling with your design career." He made air quotes with his fingers, a gesture so dismissive I felt physically struck. "And Vanessa and I are thinking about starting a family. We need to make smart financial decisions." Vanessa leaned forward, her expression a practiced mix of sympathy and firmness. "What Marcus is trying to say is that the current arrangement isn't sustainable. The property is worth nearly $2 million in today's market. That's a significant asset sitting there underutilized." "Underutilized?" I repeated, feeling dizzy. "It's our family home. Mom and Dad wanted us both to have it." Marcus sighed heavily, as if I was being deliberately obtuse. "Actually, legally, I own 79% of the house. You signed the transfer papers 2 years ago, remember?" I didn't remember, not clearly. There had been so many documents after our parents died, and I had trusted Marcus completely to handle the legal aspects while I processed my grief. "You told me those papers were for tax purposes," I said, my confusion giving way to a creeping sense of betrayal. "And they were partially," he replied with a shrug. But they also transferred majority ownership to me, which made sense given my financial contributions to maintaining the property. The casual way he admitted to misleading me made my stomach turn. This was my brother, the person who had promised at our parents' graves that we would always look out for each other. "So what exactly are you saying?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "I'm saying you have two options," Marcus stated clinically. "Pay market rate rent of $8,800 per month, which is actually below what similar properties are going for in the neighborhood, or find another place to live. We'll give you 60 days to decide and make arrangements." The room seemed to spin around me. My monthly income barely reached $3,000 on good months. Even if I abandoned my design career and took a corporate job tomorrow, I couldn't afford that kind of rent, and Marcus knew it. This is insane," I stammered. "You know I can't afford that. That house is my home, our home. Mom and Dad wanted Mom, and Dad wanted us to be responsible adults," Marcus interrupted sharply. "Not for you to be living rent-free in a $2 million property at 32 while still finding yourself. They've been gone 5 years, Cassidy. It's time to grow up." His words cut deep, not just because of their cruelty but because of the calculated precision with which he delivered them. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. This was a planned eviction of his own sister. "We're not trying to be harsh," Vanessa added, her lawyer voice in full effect. "But you have to see this from our perspective. We're getting married, planning for children. That house is in an excellent school district, has plenty of space for a growing family. It makes practical sense for us." The realization hit me like a physical blow. "You want the house for yourselves," I whispered. "You're not just asking for rent. You know I can't pay. You want me gone so you can move in." Neither of them denied it. Instead, Marcus straightened his shoulders and said, "It's a practical solution. You get a fresh start somewhere more appropriate for your situation, and we get a family home without having to buy in this insane market." "Appropriate for my situation," I echoed, anger finally breaking through my shock. "You mean somewhere cheap and small because I chose a creative career instead of chasing money like you?" Marcus's expression hardened. "Don't make this about your career choices. This is about being an adult and paying your way. Mom and Dad wouldn't have expected me to subsidize you indefinitely." I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping loudly against their immaculate hardwood floor. "Don't you dare bring them into this. They would be ashamed of what you're doing right now." A flash of something guilt perhaps crossed Marcus's face before it was replaced by the same cold determination. 60 days, Cass. That's generous notice. More than most landlords would give. "Landlord," I repeated, the word bitter in my mouth. "Is that what you are to me now? Not my brother but my landlord." Vanessa cleared her throat delicately. "We've prepared some paperwork outlining the terms. Just to keep everything above board." She slid a manila folder across the table toward me. I stared at it but didn't touch it. "How long have you been planning this?" They exchanged another glance and I knew. This wasn't a recent decision, this had been the plan all along. Perhaps since the moment Marcus met Vanessa, or even before. While I had been trusting in our sibling bond, he had been calculating how to leverage my vulnerability. "The real estate market isn't going to wait for you to establish your career," Cassidy, Marcus said, ignoring my question. "We're being practical." I laughed, then a harsh sound, without humor. "Practical. Right, that's one word for it." I grabbed my purse and headed for the door, leaving the manila folder untouched on their perfect table. "Cass, don't be dramatic," Marcus called after me. "Just think about it rationally." I turned at the door, taking in the scene one last time, my brother and his fiancée surrounded by their expensive possessions, looking at me with a mixture of impatience and pity. "I've been thinking rationally for years," I said quietly. "Rationally believing that family meant something to you. Thanks for clearing that up for me." As I drove home to the house that apparently wasn't mine anymore, tears blurred my vision, but something else was forming beneath the hurt determination. Marcus had just declared war, wielding legal documents and cold business logic as his weapons. What he didn't know was that I had weapons of my own, 5 years' worth of insider knowledge about his business, his clients, and his methods. He had taught me everything about his company while I worked alongside him, never imagining I might one day use that information against him. If Marcus wanted to play hardball, I could play too. He had forgotten one crucial lesson our parents taught us: underestimate me at your own risk. The next morning I woke up with swollen eyes and a clarity I hadn't felt in years. The initial shock and hurt had crystallized into something harder, more focused. As I moved through our family home, the home Marcus now claimed as primarily his, I saw it with new eyes. The faded photographs of our family vacations. The small chip in the kitchen counter where Marcus had dropped Mom's heavy cast iron pan. The height markings on the doorframe, tracking our growth through childhood. This wasn't just real estate, it was our history. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table, the same table where our family had shared thousands of meals. Opening my laptop, I created a new document titled Options. I needed to be methodical about this. Emotion wouldn't help me now. Option 1, pay the rent, immediately discarded. Even if I emptied my savings and took a corporate job immediately, $800 was impossible. Option 2, find another place to live. Possible but painful. Apartment rentals in our area started around $2,000 for anything halfway decent, which would still strain my finances. Option 3, fight back. I stared at those two words for a long time. Fighting back meant acknowledging that my relationship with Marcus had fundamentally changed. He was no longer my protective older brother, but an adversary who had used my trust against me. The question was, how do you fight someone who holds all the legal cards? The answer came to me as I scrolled through my email, looking for the exact documents Marcus had had me sign 2 years ago. I couldn't find them, another red flag I'd missed, but I did find something else. Hundreds of emails between Marcus and his clients, all routed through me because I managed most of his digital correspondence. For 5 years I had been the unofficial administrative backbone of Morgan Property Management. I designed their marketing materials, built their website, managed their social media, handled client communications, and even drafted contracts using templates Marcus provided. All without formal compensation, because we were family helping family. On a hunch, I opened the folder on my external hard drive where I kept backup copies of all my work for Marcus's company. 5 years of designs, contracts, client information, financial projections, all meticulously organized because that's how I approach my work, even when it's for family. As I began reviewing these files more carefully, inconsistencies emerged. Contract versions that didn't match what I remembered creating. Financial statements with discrepancies. Client complaints that had seemingly disappeared from the official record. With growing suspicion, I dug deeper. I pulled up the company's website that I had designed and maintained, logging into the backend with the administrator credentials I'd created years ago. Marcus had never bothered to change them. Why would he? I was trustworthy. Cassidy, his supportive sister. In the content management system, I found archived versions of pages I'd created, including the testimonials section. Comparing them to the current live version, I noticed several negative reviews had vanished. Clients who had complained about unexpected fees, maintenance issues, or contract discrepancies had been systematically removed from the public-facing site. My heart raced as I opened another folder, this one containing all the financial documentation I'd helped organize for tax purposes. I wasn't an accountant, but even I could see potential problems: properties listed with different purchase prices in different documents, maintenance expenses that seemed inflated, income that appeared inconsistently across reports. Was it possible that Marcus, my straight-arrow, business-minded brother, had been cutting corners? Or worse, I needed professional eyes on this. Scrolling through my contacts, I found Eliza Chen's number. We'd been friends in college and she had gone on to become a forensic accountant. We hadn't spoken in months, but this seemed worth reconnecting for. Cassidy Morgan, as I live and breathe, Eliza said when she picked up. To what do I owe this pleasure? I need your professional opinion on something, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Confidentially. Can I buy you coffee tomorrow? Sounds serious, she replied, her tone shifting from playful to concerned. Is this about your brother's company? You were doing some work for him, right? Yes, I confirmed, and I think I've found some irregularities. Eliza agreed to meet me the following morning at a cafe far from my neighborhood, where we were unlikely to run into anyone connected to Marcus. After hanging up, I continued my digital excavation with renewed purpose. By midnight, I had compiled a substantial folder of questionable documents and communications. Nothing definitively illegal jumped out. I wasn't an expert, but there were enough red flags to warrant deeper investigation. As I finally prepared for bed, my phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Have you thought about our conversation? Vanessa and I need an answer by the end of the week. The market is hot right now, and we have a realtor ready if you decide to move out. The casual cruelty of it, assuming I would either pay an impossible sum or vacate my home within a week, sent a fresh wave of determination through me. He wasn't even giving me the 60 days he'd initially mentioned. The mask had fully dropped. I didn't respond to his text. Instead, I set my alarm early and tried to sleep, my mind racing with possibilities. If Marcus had indeed been engaging in financial impropriety, I might have leverage. But using it would mean crossing a line from which our sibling relationship might never recover. Then again, he had already crossed that line when he decided to exploit my trust and effectively steal our parents' home. The next morning, I met Eliza at the agreed cafe, bringing my laptop and a USB drive containing copies of all the questionable documents. She listened without interruption as I explained the situation, both the personal betrayal and my suspicions about the business practices. So let me get this straight, Eliza said when I finished. You've been working for your brother's company for 5 years without formal compensation, and now he's trying to evict you from your shared family home by imposing an impossible rent. I nodded. And in the process of reassessing this relationship, you've discovered potential financial irregularities in his business. That's what I need you to tell me, I said, sliding the USB drive across the table. I'm not an expert, but things don't add up. Eliza took the drive, her expression serious. I'll look at these tonight. But Cassidy, you need to be prepared. If there is something illegal happening here and you bring it to light, there's no going back. Your relationship with your brother will likely be permanently damaged. I thought about Marcus's cold eyes, as he had told me to grow up, about Vanessa's calculating smile, about the casual way they had planned to displace me from my home. I think that relationship is already damaged beyond repair, I said quietly. I just need to know what my options are. Eliza promised to call me the next day with her assessment. As I left the cafe, I felt a strange mix of dread and anticipation. Whatever she found would determine my next move. That evening, as I sat in our family home, possibly for one of the last times, I allowed myself to really feel the magnitude of Marcus's betrayal. This wasn't just about property or money, it was about the systematic dismantling of what I thought was an unbreakable bond. My phone rang around 9 p.m. It was Eliza, earlier than expected. We need to talk, she said, her voice tense. In person. Can you meet me at my office tomorrow morning? Is it bad? I asked. There was a pause before she answered. It's significant. More than I expected to find from an initial review. Cassidy, your brother hasn't just been cutting corners. Based on what I'm seeing, there's evidence of potential tax fraud, misrepresentation to clients, and possibly money laundering. The room seemed to tilt around me. Money laundering, Marcus, the patterns are there, Eliza said gravely. Property values, misrepresented cash flowing through accounts in strange ways, phantom maintenance expenses. I need to do more analysis, but this isn't small stuff, Cass. If reported to the right authorities, your brother could face serious consequences. I thanked her and hung up my mind, reeling. The brother I thought I knew, ambitious but honest, driven but ethical, was apparently a fraud in more ways than one. As I tried to process this revelation, another text from Marcus arrived. Realtor wants to show the house this weekend. Make sure it's presentable, or better yet, make yourself scarce. Potential buyers don't need to know about our arrangement. Something snapped inside me. The house wasn't even legally his to sell. I still owned 21% according to the papers he'd had me sign. Yet here he was planning to sell our family home out from under me without so much as a consultation. In that moment, my decision crystallized. Marcus had chosen this path, not me. He had betrayed our parents' memory, exploited my trust, and apparently built his business on deception. Whatever happened next, he had brought it upon himself. You know what, guys? This is where the story gets real. I was at my breaking point, facing homelessness while discovering my brother's web of financial deception. Have you ever had that moment when you realized someone you trusted completely was living a double life? Drop a comment below with your thoughts on what you would do in this situation. Should I have just walked away, or was it time for some family justice? And if you're invested in finding out exactly how I turned the tables, make sure you hit that subscribe button. The next part shows exactly how I used my brother's own tactics against him in the most unexpected way. The morning after Eliza's disturbing call, I woke with a clarity and purpose I hadn't felt in years. This wasn't just about saving my home anymore, it was about justice. Marcus had not only betrayed me and our parents' memory, but potentially broken the law and harmed his clients in the process. Someone needed to hold him accountable, and that someone would be me. I arrived at Eliza's downtown office at precisely 8 a.m., coffee in hand, and determination in my heart. Her office was the opposite of Marcus and Vanessa's sleek minimalism, organized chaos, with stacks of papers and multiple computer screens, displaying complex spreadsheets and diagrams. I've been up most of the night, she admitted, accepting the coffee gratefully. Once I started digging into these files, I couldn't stop. It's like peeling an onion, layer after layer of financial misdirection. She turned one of her monitors toward me, showing a complex flowchart she had created. Here's what I've pieced together so far. Morgan Property Management looks legitimate on the surface. It manages real properties, collects real rent, maintains real buildings. But beneath that, there's a shadow operation. What kind of shadow operation? I asked, trying to follow the complicated diagram. Several things happening simultaneously, Eliza explained. First, there's systematic tax fraud. Your brother has been reporting lower purchase prices for properties to reduce tax obligations, then recording higher prices in his internal documents to justify larger rent increases to tenants. She clicked to another screen. Second, there's evidence of investor fraud. He's been raising money for property renovations, showing investors one set of plans and cost estimates, then doing minimal work and pocketing the difference. My stomach twisted. And the money laundering, that's the most complex part, Eliza said, pulling up another document. There's a pattern of cash flowing through the business that doesn't match legitimate operational needs. Properties purchased through shell companies, maintenance contracts with vendors that don't seem to exist, rental income that appears and disappears from different reports. I can't prove it definitively without more investigation, but the patterns match classic money laundering techniques. I sat back, trying to process what I was hearing. How long has this been going on? Based on the documents you provided, at least 3 years. Possibly longer. Eliza looked at me sympathetically. Cassidy, this is serious. If you report this to the IRS and the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit, your brother could face substantial jail time. The weight of that possibility settled on my shoulders. Despite everything, sending my own brother to prison was a sobering thought. What are my options? I asked finally. Eliza leaned forward. Legally speaking, you have 3. 1. Report everything to the authorities and let justice take its course. 2. Confront Marcus privately and demand he set things right, though that's risky given what we know about his character now. 3. Walk away, find another place to live, and cut ties with him and his business. None of those options felt satisfying. The first would destroy Marcus completely, but might also implicate me since I had unwittingly participated in his business. The second seemed naive. Marcus had already shown he couldn't be trusted. And the third meant surrendering my home and letting him continue his schemes unchallenged. There has to be another way, I said slowly, an idea forming. What if I could take control of the company instead? Eliza raised her eyebrows. How would you manage that? You don't have the capital to buy him out, and he doesn't seem interested in negotiating. I tapped my fingers on the desk thoughtfully. You mentioned investor fraud. Who are these investors? Various individuals and a couple of small investment groups, Eliza said, consulting her notes. Mostly local wealthy people looking for reliable returns. The largest is Brookfield Partners. They've invested about $2.4 million over the past 2 years for property acquisitions and renovations. Do we have contact information for them? Eliza nodded slowly, understanding dawning in her eyes. You're thinking of approaching them directly. That's bold and risky. What if I don't directly accuse Marcus of fraud? I suggested. What if I simply present myself as a concerned insider, with documentation suggesting their investments haven't been used as promised? I could offer to help them audit the projects. That could work, Eliza said thoughtfully. But once they discover discrepancies, they'll likely go to the authorities themselves. The end result might be the same as option 1. Not necessarily, I countered. If I position myself as the solution rather than just the whistleblower, I might be able to salvage the legitimate parts of the business while excising the fraudulent elements. These investors want returns, not a legal battle. If I can offer them a path to protecting their investments without the public scandal of fraud charges, they might be amenable. Eliza looked impressed. You've got more business savvy than you give yourself credit for, Cassidy, but executing this would require perfect timing and substantial documentation. Documentation I have, I reminded her, pointing to the files I'd brought. And as for timing, Marcus has given me a deadline to vacate the house. I'll give him a deadline too. Over the next 3 hours, Eliza and I formulated a detailed plan. We identified the key investors, prepared documentation packages, highlighting discrepancies between what they had been promised and what had been delivered, and drafted a proposal for restructuring the company under new management. The linchpin of the plan was Brookfield Partners. If I could convince them to back me instead of Marcus, the other investors would likely follow suit. According to Eliza's analysis, these investors collectively had enough leverage to force Marcus out if they acted together. There's one more piece we need, Eliza said as we finalized our strategy. Proof that you're capable of running the company better than your brother. These investors won't back you just because Marcus betrayed them. They need confidence. You can protect their money going forward. She was right. Despite my intimate knowledge of the business from years of working alongside Marcus, I had no formal business management credentials. Why would wealthy investors trust me over him? The answer came to me in a flash of inspiration. The clients, I said. I have relationships with almost all of Marcus's clients. I've been their main point of contact for years, handling their concerns, resolving their issues. Many of them have expressed frustration with Marcus's inflexibility and lack of transparency. What if I approached them too? Eliza nodded slowly. Client testimonials supporting you over Marcus would be powerful, but you'd need to be careful not to violate any confidentiality agreements. I won't need to, I replied. I'll simply ask them about their experience and whether they'd be open to new management that addresses their concerns. No need to mention fraud or my specific plans for Marcus. By the time I left Eliza's office that afternoon, we had a comprehensive strategy and a timeline. I would start contacting clients tomorrow, arrange a meeting with Brookfield Partners by the end of the week, and be ready to confront Marcus with a fully formed takeover plan within 2 weeks, well before his arbitrary deadline for me to vacate our family home. As I drove home, a mix of emotions swirled within me. Determination, yes, but also sadness. This plan, if successful, would sever any remaining bonds between Marcus and me permanently. The brother I had looked up to for so long would become an adversary I had deliberately outmaneuvered. But he had made his choice when he decided to betray me, our parents' memory, and apparently the law itself. I was simply ensuring that his actions had consequences and that those consequences didn't include me losing my home. That evening, as I sat in our family living room surrounded by photos of happier times, my phone buzzed with a text from Marcus Realtor coming by tomorrow at 2 p.m. Make sure the place is clean. And start packing. I've found a studio apartment that might be in your price range. It's not in a great area, but beggars can't be choosers, right? The casual cruelty of his message solidified my resolve. I texted back for the first time since our dinner, I'll be out tomorrow afternoon. Taking some important meetings. His reply came quickly, good. Don't forget to make the bed and take out the trash before you go. I didn't dignify that with a response. Instead, I opened my laptop and began composing carefully worded emails to Marcus's clients, requesting brief meetings to discuss potential changes to Morgan Property Management's service approach. By midnight, my inbox was already filling with positive responses. Marcus's clients, it seemed, were more than happy to discuss their experiences with someone who had always listened to their concerns. As I finally prepared for bed, I felt a strange sense of calm. The path ahead was clear now. Marcus had taught me everything I needed to know about his business, never imagining I might one day use that knowledge against him. He had underestimated me, dismissed me as his struggling, naive little sister who would simply accept whatever fate he decided for me. That had been his first mistake. His last would be realizing too late that I was a Morgan too, and we Morgans protect what's ours. You know, this journey taught me so much about standing up for myself when it matters most. I'd been quietly helping my brother's business succeed for years while he plotted against me. Have you ever realized you needed to fight for what's rightfully yours? I'm about to share how I methodically approached key investors and clients to build my case. If you're invested in seeing how this family power struggle plays out, hit that subscribe button now, and let me know in the comments if you've ever had to confront someone who betrayed your trust. The next part reveals exactly how I executed my plan, and the shocking reaction when Marcus realized what was happening. The next 2 weeks were the most intense of my life. By day, I met with Marcus's clients, carefully documenting their frustrations and securing tentative commitments to support new management. By night, I worked with Eliza to compile evidence and refine our proposal for the investors. My first client meeting was with James Henderson, owner of 3 apartment buildings that Marcus managed. We met at a quiet cafe away from Marcus's usual haunts. Frankly, Cassidy, I've been considering taking my business elsewhere for months, James admitted, after I explained I was exploring a new direction for the company. The maintenance issues in my buildings keep getting addressed on paper, but my tenants still complain about the same problems. When I ask Marcus for documentation of repairs, I get vague invoices without details. What if those issues were actually resolved with transparent documentation and regular updates? I asked. James studied me thoughtfully. If you're suggesting what I think you are taking over management from your brother, I'd certainly consider staying. You've always been responsive when I've had concerns. By the end of our conversation, James had verbally committed to transferring his contract to me if I established my own management company or took control of Marcus's. Similar meetings followed. Nearly every client had some grievance, maintenance problems, ignored unexpected fees, appearing rent increases implemented without proper notice. And nearly every client expressed a preference for working with me, rather than Marcus having dealt with both of us over the years. The most crucial meeting, however, was with Brookfield Partners. Eliza had used her professional contacts to secure me a meeting with their managing director, Richard Brookfield himself. I prepared meticulously, creating a presentation that highlighted discrepancies between promised renovations and actual work completed, complete with photographs and contractor statements. The Brookfield offices occupied the top floor of a downtown high-rise, all glass and steel and quiet power. I dressed carefully in my most professional outfit, pushing aside my usual creative style for something Marcus-like, a conservative suit, minimal jewelry, hair pulled back severely. I needed to project authority and competence. Richard Brookfield was a silver-haired man with shrewd eyes that seemed to evaluate my net worth as I entered his office. "Miss Morgan," he said, gesturing to a chair, "your message suggested you have concerns about our investments with Morgan Property Management. I'm listening, but my time is limited." I didn't waste a second. "Mr. Brookfield, your firm has invested $2.4 million with my brother's company over the past 2 years for specific property improvements. I have documentation suggesting those improvements have not been made as promised, despite reports to the contrary." I opened my laptop and presented my findings side by side, comparisons of promised renovations and actual conditions, financial records showing discrepancies between funds received and work completed, contractor statements confirming they had been paid for work they never performed. Brookfield's expression remained impassive, but his eyes grew harder as my presentation continued. When I finished, he was silent for a long moment. "These are serious allegations, Miss Morgan. If accurate, they constitute fraud." "They're accurate," I assured him, "and I understand that your next thought might be to contact the authorities. Before you do, I'd like to propose an alternative that protects your investment without the public relations complications of a fraud investigation." He leaned back, steepling his fingers. "I'm listening." "I've worked alongside my brother for 5 years," I explained. "I know the business intimately, the properties, the clients, the operations. I also have the support of many key clients who prefer working with me already." I handed him a folder containing statements from the clients I'd met with. "I'm proposing a restructuring that removes my brother from operational control and installs me as CEO, with appropriate oversight from major investors like yourself." Brookfield's eyebrows rose slightly. "Bold. But why would we trust you rather than simply pulling our investment entirely?" "Because pulling out entirely guarantees you lose money," I said bluntly. "The properties themselves are sound, they're just being mismanaged. With proper management and the renovations actually completed as promised, your return would be substantial. I'm offering you a path to protect and grow your investment rather than writing it off as a loss." He studied me with new interest. "And what makes you qualified to run a property management company of this size?" I'd anticipated this question. "I've been running it in all but name for years. I've managed client relationships, overseen project documentation, handled all marketing and communications. The clients already trust me more than they trust Marcus. What I lack in formal business credentials, I make up for in domain knowledge and client relationships. And your brother, he'll fight this, I assume." "He will," I acknowledged. "But with evidence of financial impropriety and major investors and clients backing me, his options will be limited. I believe he'll accept a structured exit to avoid legal consequences." Brookfield was quiet for a long moment, considering. "I'll need to discuss this with my partners. And I'll want our own forensic accountants to verify your findings." "Of course," I agreed, handing him a USB drive. "This contains all the documentation I've presented today, plus additional supporting evidence. I welcome your independent verification." As I left the meeting, I felt cautiously optimistic. Brookfield hadn't committed, but he hadn't dismissed me either. If his firm's investigation confirmed my findings, which I knew it would, I would have the leverage I needed. Over the next week, similar meetings with other investors followed. Each was skeptical initially, but the evidence was compelling and my alternative to legal action appealing. By day 10 of my 2-week plan, I had tentative support from investors, representing over 70% of the external capital in Marcus's business. Meanwhile, Marcus continued his campaign to force me out of our family home, unaware of what was happening behind the scenes. His texts grew increasingly pushy. Realtor has an interested buyer. They want to see the house again tomorrow. Make yourself scarce from 1 to 3 p.m. Have you started packing? Vanessa knows a moving company that might give you a discount. Found some boxes in the garage. Left them by your door. Time's running out, Cass. Each message strengthened my resolve. I responded minimally, buying time while my plan came together. On day 12, Richard Brookfield called me directly. Our accountants have verified your findings, Miss Morgan. The discrepancies are even more substantial than you indicated. We're prepared to support your restructuring proposal with conditions. Those conditions were strict but fair: regular financial audits, a board seat for Brookfield Partners, specific performance targets for the first year. I agreed to all of them, and by the end of the day, I had a formal letter of support from Brookfield Partners, contingent on the removal of Marcus from operational control. The other investors quickly followed suit, and by day 14, the deadline I had set for myself, I had everything I needed: investor support, client commitments, and irrefutable evidence of Marcus's financial misconduct. It was time for the confrontation. I chose neutral ground, a private meeting room at a downtown hotel, and asked Eliza to be present as a witness and professional advisor. Marcus arrived punctually, his expression shifting from annoyed to confused when he saw Eliza. What's this about, Cass? I've got a busy day, and if this is some attempt to renegotiate the house situation, I've been clear about my terms. This isn't about the house directly, I said calmly, gesturing for him to sit. Though it is related. This is about Morgan Property Management. His eyes narrowed. My company has nothing to do with our personal arrangements. That's where you're wrong, I replied, opening a folder in front of me. Your company, built partly through my uncompensated work, is how you've gained the financial leverage to try to force me out of our family home. But there's a problem with using that leverage, Marcus. The company itself is built on fraud. His face paled slightly, but he recovered quickly. What are you talking about? My business is completely legitimate. Is it? I slid copies of some of the documents Eliza and I had compiled across the table. Tax fraud, investor fraud, possible money laundering, misappropriation of renovation funds. Shall I continue? Marcus glanced at the documents, his expression hardening. These are private business records. You had no right to access them. Actually, I had every right, I countered. I've been an integral part of the business for 5 years with access you granted me. Everything I've compiled came from my legitimate work for the company. Whatever you think you've found, you're mistaken, Marcus said dismissively, though sweat had appeared on his forehead. I run a complex business with many moving parts. What looks like discrepancies to an amateur are just normal business operations. Brookfield Partners disagrees, I said quietly, sliding another document toward him, the letter of support from Richard Brookfield. As do Henderson Properties, Westlake Investments, and most of your other major clients and investors. They've all seen the same evidence I'm showing you. The color drained from Marcus's face as he read Brookfield's letter. You went behind my back to my investors, my clients, my own sister, your sister who you tried to make homeless. I interrupted, my calm facade cracking slightly. Your sister, who you manipulated into signing away her inheritance. Your sister, who worked for you for free for 5 years, while you built a business on fraud. Marcus fell silent, his eyes darting between the documents, Eliza and me. What do you want? He finally asked, his voice tight. I placed a final document on the table, a restructuring agreement drafted by Eliza and reviewed by a corporate attorney. I want control of the company. You resign as CEO, transfer all operational authority to me, and retain a 20% silent partnership with no decision-making power. In exchange, we handle this internally, no authorities, no charges, no public scandal. That's extortion, he snarled. No, I replied steadily. It's accountability. Your investors and clients are already on board, they just want their money protected and their properties properly managed. They don't care who's in charge as long as the fraud stops and their investments are secure. This is the cleanest way for that to happen, and if I refuse, I looked him directly in the eyes. Then tomorrow morning, all of this evidence goes to the IRS, the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit, and the State Attorney General's office. Your choice, Marcus. He stared at me for a long moment, disbelief and fury warring in his expression. You would do that to your own brother? The audacity of his question after everything he had done nearly made me laugh. I learned from the best, I said instead. You taught me that family loyalty only matters until it doesn't remember. The silence stretched between us, heavy with years of broken trust and new revelations. Finally, Marcus reached for the restructuring agreement. I want to read the full terms, he said, stiffly. And I'll need my own lawyer to review this. Of course, I agreed. You have 48 hours. After that, my offer expires and Plan B goes into effect. He nodded tersely, gathered the documents, and stood to leave. At the door, he paused and looked back at me. I never thought you had this in you, Cass. I underestimated you. Yes, I said simply, you did. After he left, Eliza turned to me, her expression impressed. That went even better than I expected. Do you think he'll sign? I nodded, the adrenaline of the confrontation finally ebbing. He will. Marcus has always been pragmatic above all else. When he reviews everything we've compiled and confirms that his investors and clients are backing me, he'll realize this is his best option. True to my prediction, Marcus's lawyer contacted Eliza the next day to negotiate minor adjustments to the agreement. By the 48-hour deadline, we had a signed restructuring contract, transferring operational control of Morgan Property Management to me, with Marcus reduced to a silent minority partner. The transition happened quickly after that. I moved into Marcus's office, now my office, and began the process of legitimizing the business, starting with full transparency about the past issues and my plan to address them. Most clients and investors appreciated the honesty and commitment to change. Marcus and Vanessa quietly moved their wedding plans to another city. Their dreams of taking over our family home evaporated in the face of Marcus's diminished circumstances. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Vanessa was reconsidering the relationship entirely now that Marcus's financial future looked less certain. As for me, I remained in our family home, fully mine now as part of the restructuring agreement, and focused on rebuilding the company the right way. The irony wasn't lost on me that Marcus's attempt to force me out had instead given me not only secure housing but a thriving business and financial independence. In the end, Marcus had been right about one thing: it was time for me to grow up, just not in the way he had intended. 6 months after the restructuring, Morgan Property Management, rebranded as Morgan Residential Solutions, was thriving under my leadership. I had systematically addressed the issues that had plagued the company under Marcus's management, implementing transparent financial reporting, completing the promised renovations to investor properties, establishing clear communication channels with tenants, and creating fair pricing structures. The changes weren't easy. I worked 16-hour days, learned business management on the fly, and faced skepticism from industry peers who questioned my qualifications. But the results spoke for themselves. Client retention improved by 22%, tenant complaints decreased by 38%, and investor confidence was restored with new capital flowing in for legitimate property improvements. I hired a proper staff, including a COO with extensive property management experience, and a CFO recommended by Eliza to ensure financial transparency. I paid myself a reasonable salary, more than I'd ever made as a freelance designer, but far less than Marcus had been skimming from the business. Every decision was documented, every dollar tracked. Richard Brookfield, initially my most skeptical supporter, became my strongest advocate. Cassidy has transformed this company from a potential legal disaster into a model of industry best practices, he told other investors at our 6-month reunion. Our returns are lower than what Marcus promised, but they're real and sustainable. As for my brother, he and Vanessa had moved to Chicago, where he had found a position with a commercial real estate firm, a significant step down from being CEO of his own company, but better than the alternative he'd faced. Our communication was limited to necessary business matters regarding his minority stake in the company. The sibling relationship seemed beyond repair, though I sometimes wondered if time might eventually heal some of those wounds. The family home remained mine, a condition I had insisted on in the restructuring agreement. I had redecorated parts of it, exorcising some painful memories and creating new spaces that reflected my aesthetic, rather than preserving our parents' choices frozen in time. Yet I kept certain elements untouched: the height markings on the doorframe, the family photos in the hallway, the handmade Christmas ornaments our mother had treasured. Some legacies deserved preservation. On a personal level, the experience had transformed me. The uncertain, somewhat directionless younger sister had been replaced by a confident business leader who made decisions quickly and stood by them. I still pursued creative work. Designing the company's new brand identity had been a joy, but now it complemented my business role, rather than defining my entire professional identity. Eliza and I had become close friends through the ordeal, often meeting for dinner to discuss business strategy or just to unwind. During one such dinner, about 8 months after the confrontation with Marcus, she asked the question I'd been avoiding. "Have you thought about reaching out to him, not about business, but as family?" I twirled pasta around my fork, considering. Sometimes. But then I remember how easily he was willing to throw me away for his convenience, how he manipulated me for years. And I'm not sure what would be gained by reopening that door. Fair enough, Eliza acknowledged. Though people can change when they're forced to face consequences. Perhaps I conceded. But they have to want to change. Last I heard, Marcus was telling mutual acquaintances that I stole his company through underhanded tactics. Eliza rolled her eyes. Projection at its finest. We moved on to other topics, but the conversation lingered in my mind. Despite everything, Marcus was still my brother, my only living family. Did that count for anything? After such a profound betrayal, I didn't have to wonder long. The next morning, my assistant informed me that Marcus was in the lobby requesting to see me. "He doesn't have an appointment," she added. "I can ask him to schedule one for later this week." "No," I decided after a moment's hesitation. "I'll see him now." Marcus looked different when he entered my office, thinner, less polished, the confident swagger replaced by a guarded wariness. He took in the changes I'd made to the space: warmer colors, more natural light, comfortable visitor chairs rather than the intimidating ones he'd preferred. "The place looks good," he offered awkwardly. "The whole company does, from what I hear." "Thank you," I replied, gesturing for him to sit. "What brings you back to town, Marcus?" He sat fidgeting with his watch, a nervous habit from childhood I hadn't seen in years. "Vanessa and I broke up," he said abruptly. "Or rather, she broke up with me. Turns out her interest was more in my potential wealth than in me personally." "I'm sorry," I said, and was surprised to realize I meant it. For all his faults, Marcus didn't deserve to be valued only for his money. He shrugged. "It's been educational. Makes me see some things differently." He paused, gathering himself. "Including how I treated you." I remained silent, waiting. This was his conversation to lead. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he continued. "About us, about Mom and Dad, about what I did with the company and to you." He looked up, meeting my eyes directly. "I was wrong, Cassidy. Not just legally or ethically wrong with the business, but wrong in how I treated my sister. You deserved better. The apology caught me off guard. I had expected excuses, perhaps negotiation for better terms, or even recriminations, not this apparent sincerity. What are you hoping for here, Marcus? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Nothing, he said quickly. I'm not asking for anything. I don't expect forgiveness or a role back in the company or anything really. I just wanted to tell you face to face that I recognize what I did, and I'm sorry for it. I studied him looking for signs of manipulation or hidden agendas, but found only what appeared to be genuine regret. That means something, I acknowledged finally. Though it doesn't undo what happened. I know. He nodded. I'm trying to make changes. I'm seeing a therapist working on understanding why I was willing to sacrifice our relationship for money and status. It's not pretty looking at yourself that clearly, but it's necessary. We talked for nearly an hour after that, not as business associates or even as estranged siblings trying to reconcile, but as two people with a shared history trying to make sense of where things had gone wrong. It wasn't comfortable, but it was honest in a way our interactions hadn't been for years. As he prepared to leave, Marcus hesitated at the door. I know I have no right to ask, but would you be open to talking again sometime, maybe over coffee, not about business, just as family, trying to find a new way forward? I considered his request carefully. The hurt and betrayal hadn't disappeared, and trust once broken so thoroughly couldn't be repaired in a single conversation. Yet something in his demeanor suggested that his remorse might be genuine. Coffee, I agreed cautiously. No promises beyond that. We'll see where it goes. He nodded, understanding the limitations. That's more than fair. Thank you, Cass. After he left, I sat at my desk for a long time processing the unexpected interaction. I didn't know if a meaningful relationship with Marcus was possible after everything that had happened, but I was no longer certain it was impossible either. That evening, as I walked through the family home that was now securely mine, I felt a sense of completion. The business was thriving under ethical management, my financial future was secure, and even my relationship with Marcus had the possibility, however, remote, of eventual healing. I had lost the brother I thought I had, but in the process I had found a strength in myself I hadn't known existed. That seemed like a fair trade, all things considered. In the study, I passed the photo of our parents on their 20th anniversary, smiling, happy, unaware of how their children's relationship would fracture after they were gone. I protected what mattered, I told their image softly. I think you would have understood. And somewhere deep inside, I felt they would have. They had raised us both to stand up for ourselves after all. They just probably never imagined we would need to stand up against each other. As I prepared for bed that night, my phone chimed with a notification from the company's accounting system. The quarterly profit distribution had been processed automatically, including Marcus's 20% share. Despite everything, the system we had established was working as designed. Business continued, separate from personal feelings or past grievances. That perhaps was the greatest victory of all, creating something sustainable and fair from the ashes of betrayal. Not just reclaiming what was rightfully mine, but building something better in its place. 1 year to the day after that fateful family dinner where Marcus had attempted to force me out of our home, I stood in my office reviewing quarterly reports. Morgan Residential Solutions had not only recovered from the tumult of the transition, but was now expanding with 3 new property acquisitions and a growing reputation for ethical management and transparent client relations. My phone buzzed with a text from Eliza. Don't forget celebration dinner tonight. 1 year of you being a badass CEO. I'm bringing champagne. I smiled, texting back a quick confirmation. The friendship that had begun in crisis had deepened into something invaluable. Eliza was now both a trusted business advisor and my closest confidant. As I prepared to leave for the day, my assistant notified me of one last visitor. Richard Brookfield had stopped by without an appointment. Send him in, I said, curious about the unscheduled visit from our largest investor. Richard entered with the same confident stride he'd shown in all our meetings, but there was a warmth in his expression that had developed gradually over our working relationship. Cassidy, he greeted me with a firm handshake. Sorry for dropping in unannounced, but I wanted to deliver this in person. He handed me an envelope bearing the Brookfield Partners letterhead. I opened it to find a formal letter committing to an additional $5 million investment for expansion opportunities, with terms even more favorable than our existing arrangement. This is insignificant, I said, scanning the details. May I ask what prompted such a vote of confidence? Richard smiled. Results, Miss Morgan. 1 year ago we took a chance on an unproven leader, with a compelling story and solid evidence of past mismanagement. Today, we're investing in a proven executive with a track record of ethical leadership and consistent returns. It's really quite simple. After he left, I sat with the letter, feeling the weight of the journey that had brought me here. From undermined sibling to company leader, from creative freelancer to respected businesswoman, the transformation still sometimes caught me by surprise when I glimpsed my reflection in the office windows or heard myself confidently directing a board meeting. That evening at dinner with Eliza, after the champagne toast to 1 successful year, our conversation turned reflective. Did you ever imagine this is where you'd be when you first discovered what Marcus was doing? She asked. I considered the question seriously. Never. I just wanted to keep my home and some sense of dignity. The company was a means to that end, not the goal itself. And now? I paused, finding the right words. Now I understand that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Not because it was planned, but because when pushed to my limits I discovered capabilities I didn't know I had. Eliza raised her glass. To finding strength in unexpected places. I clinked my glass against hers. And to having friends who help you find it. After dinner, I drove home to the house that had been the center of the conflict and was now unquestionably mine. Marcus and I had established a cautious, limited relationship over the past 6 months. Monthly coffee meetings had evolved into occasional family-only dinners. We weren't close, probably never would be again, but we had found a way to coexist without the bitterness that had initially defined our split. He had relocated back to our city, taking a position with a commercial real estate firm where his skills could be utilized without giving him control over financial operations. In our last conversation, he had mentioned starting therapy to work through his issues with control and entitlement, a step I couldn't have imagined him taking a year ago. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed a package on the front porch. Inside, I found a framed photo of our parents that had gone missing during the transition. One I'd particularly loved, showing them laughing together on a family vacation. A note accompanied it. Found this while unpacking some old boxes. Thought you might want it for the house. It always belonged with you anyway. M. The gesture, small but meaningful, suggested that perhaps some healing was possible. After all, not a return to blind trust, but a new relationship built on clearer boundaries and mutual respect. I placed the photo on the mantel and sat in the quiet living room, taking in how much had changed in a year. The house had been modernized in places but still maintained the character that made it special. Like me, it had evolved without losing its essence. My laptop chimed with a bank notification, the monthly account summary. I opened it to see the balance that still sometimes surprised me. $218, 637.29 inches. My primary account with additional business accounts and investments, bringing my net worth to a figure that would have seemed impossible just a year ago. Financial security was a profound gift, one I didn't take for granted after years of uncertainty. But even more valuable was the confidence I had gained. Whatever challenges arose now, I knew I could face them. My phone rang. Eliza again. I forgot to tell you the Commercial Property Association wants you to speak at their annual conference. Theme is Ethical Leadership in Real Estate. You in Beaters. I thought about the story I could tell about betrayal and resilience, about transforming a corrupt business into an ethical one, about finding strength in adversity. I'm in, I confirmed. I think I have something worth sharing. After we hung up, I walked through the quiet house, my house, secure and solid around me. In the study, I looked at the newly placed photo of my parents and thought about how life's greatest challenges often reveal our true capabilities. I had entered this conflict as Marcus's underestimated sister and emerged as a woman who would never be underestimated again. The price had been high: family bonds, damaged trust, broken innocence, lost. But the rewards had been greater: self-reliance, authentic success, and the knowledge that I could protect what mattered when it truly counted. Some might call it karma, or poetic justice, that Marcus's attempt to displace me had resulted in his own displacement. I preferred to see it as a reminder that integrity, when backed by determination, could prevail even against seemingly insurmountable odds. This journey taught me that sometimes the most painful betrayals lead to unexpected strength. If you've found value in my story about standing up for yourself when family loyalty fails, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences. Have you ever had to confront someone who took your kindness for weakness? Share your stories in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear that they have the power to turn the tables when life gets unfair. Thank you for listening to my family revenge story. Sometimes the best justice is simply becoming the person no one thought you could be. Until next time.